All right, Blake. So here's the news. A credit rating company known as Fitch, just downgraded the US's credibility from a triple A rating, which is what we've become so accustomed to over the years, down to a double A plus rating. Now, let me ask you, first of all, what does this mean for the overall economy? Do they have this right? And then I'm going to go into some of the ulterior motives that I think are at play here regarding this rating. So, first, Blake, what does this mean to you?
Yeah, so first of all, what you're talking about, they downgraded the United States basically credit rating from a triple A, which is the best that it could possibly be, to a double A plus, which is the second best that it could possibly be. So there is a little bit of hoopla going on in the markets because of this, but the fact is, it doesn't really change the standing of where we are. But in regards to what it means, they're basically saying that it's less certain that the United States is going to pay back the debts that it's incurred through its borrowing and spending habits. And so, what that tells me is that, well, first of all, bonds are going to have a higher rate of return to attract the same investors that, like a 10-year bond or a 2-year
Hmm.
bond,
They
they're going to
did
have to
creep
start.
up. They creeped
Hmm.
up above 5% today. And I think you're
Yeah,
absolutely right, not to cut you off, but they're going to these safer methodologies to be able to have some type of guaranteed profit.
for
Absolutely.
sure.
I'm with you there.
Yeah, it's definitely something that people are going to continue to look at. But the reason why it's important is because those bonds historically have been 2 or 3%. They've kind of kept up with inflation. That was about it. But now they're starting to actually be a little bit better of an investment tool because, well, the riskier the loan, the more that the interest rate goes up, right? And so
Hmm.
basically, because the interest rate went from I'm sorry, excuse me, the credibility rating went from a triple A to a double A plus. We're going to see that in the bond market. But I actually think Fitch is correct in this assessment because I was looking at the numbers. We are currently $32 trillion in debt and 200, and I believe you can correct me if I'm wrong, Jonathan, but
Hmm.
230 something thousand dollars in the hole per taxpayer. So
Yeah.
that means basically if every single taxpayer had to chip in and pay their part of the debt, they would be paying for pretty much a modest single family home. So I don't think that's going to be happening anytime soon, considering the fact that credit card debt just went over $1 trillion for the first time in
Well,
forever, right? So
I wanted to touch on that. I actually agree with you. I can't believe that it was still a triple A up until this point. There's other factors going on here. One of the things, first of all, before I even go into the politics of this, is the fact that countries around the world, especially this alliance known as BRICS, which is Brazil, Russia, Indonesia, China, right? They are dumping the American dollar as the world currency. And so the first thing I think is going to happen is you're going to see that this whole house of cards collapses because people have traditionally invested in America because of the safety of the dollar, because of the value of the
right.
dollar. And when the dollar continues to devalue, not just through inflation, through domestic inflation, consumer inflation, but it continues to lose value in the eyes of the global markets, I think that the credibility of our country and let alone our debt goes way down. Another thing that I want to read to you here, and I put it up on the screen, so I'm going to take a look at it on my monitor. It says the credit rater downgraded the country's long-term foreign currency rating to a double A plus, claiming deterioration in standard of governance in budget matters after the U.S. came to the brink of default last June. Another thing later on in this story that they talk about is the lack of governance due to January 6th. Now, I hate to go into politics on a financial show, but sometimes I think it's warranted, right? What in the world is going on? We have obviously I agree with them, right? So I think you and I and them, they're all on the same page. We're saying, well, hey, the government is out of control, and because it's out of control, we can't trust you to pay back all of your payments, right? we think you could become delinquent. And I agree with that. I think
Yeah.
that there's a strong chance of this happening. But I also see that this company is trying to make it look as if it's the Republican conservative congressional fault for the lack of control of spending this last
Yeah.
decade under Obama, Trump, and Biden, all three of them. What do you
Well,
think
truth be
there?
told, they're all clowns. Republicans, Democrats, Independents, anybody who's in Washington, for the most part, with a few exceptions, is a clown, right? And
Mm-hmm.
so what I see is finally people are starting to wake up and realize, hold on a second, these clowns are spending our money. $32 trillion worth that we don't have. So, do I agree with their assessment? Yes. Do I agree with who they're blaming it on? Not necessarily, right?
Yep.
So that's as far as I go on that. But with that being said, I think there's another interesting factor behind this, and that's if you're looking at the politics behind this, our budget deal was basically an agreement to stop continuing to raise spending, but it didn't
Yeah.
do anything to cut spending. And
No.
so, as long as the governments continue to spend, it's going to continue to devalue the dollar. Now, here's where I'm going with this and why this is important.
All
As
right.
of right now, all of the money that we've borrowed from other countries has been in US dollars, right? These countries actually have to go to the Federal Reserve,
Through
buy
us.
dollars, and then lend it back to us.
Mm-hmm.
So we're in a unique position compared to other countries who have struggled with debt because we do have the option to print money to pay our own debt. But in doing that, right, we could, in theory, pay our debt, but what would it do? Inflation. And we've already seen inflation at historically high numbers. So imagine what happens when you go, and you look, um, it's not going to be 10% inflation. It's going to be way higher than that. So are we actually going to be able to print our way out of this? No. And if they do try it, which I believe they're going to, you're really going to be hurting. Your value of your money is going to basically disappear overnight. So
Yeah.
to me, I'd say invest in things that give you a solid return and definitely have some useful tools on you so that way you can fix things when they break during in that type of economy, right?
Yeah, yeah. No, I'm with you there. I do see how that has changed our trajectory, right? We did have the ability to pay off stuff by printing more money, but the problem is as money becomes more plentiful, you need more of it to get what you want, right? So I'm absolutely with you there. Another thing I just wanted to bring up this Reuters article, right? And one of the things that it highlighted is that this company said you have the debt ceiling, you have Jan 6. Clearly, if you look at the polarization in both parties, the Democrats have gone further left and the Republicans have gone further right. So the middle ground is falling, right? So that's really interesting to me. One last thing I want to bring up is this company, Fitch, right? What they did is they're actually owned by Hearst Communications, right? And here's
Hmm.
why I think that there's this backstory to this all with the whole Jan 6 thing, right? They listed out a political talking point for their constituents in the Democratic Party to say, hey, well, the reason why the country is not believed, the reason why we believe that the US is going to default is because of this Jan 6th thing, right? And if you
Hmm.
look and just take a small look at what they own, this company, Hearst Media, started by William Randolph Hearst, right, back in the 1800s, 1900s. They own 20% of ESPN. They own 20% of Vice Media. They own
Oh boy.
46% of Canada Company. They own Cosmopolitan Television, and they also own all of the A&E networks, including but not limited to A&E History, Lifetime TV, LMN, and FYI. Okay, does this seem like this is done for the right reasons? Or does it seem like there's possibly maybe media influence trying to damper or hold up the economy based on political whims?
Like I said earlier, I agree with their conclusion. but I disagree with how they came to their conclusion. And, by mentioning January 6th, obviously nobody's proud of what happened that day. But it seems like it's kind of like the forbidden fruit. Like once you took a bite of the apple, everything else falls apart. When in reality, this has been happening for decades. We've been running up the debt, we've been not paying our bills. And, honestly, the United States, going to be at a point soon where we're actually not going to be able to pay back the interest on the loan. Not just the loan, but the interest on the loan. So I'm more concerned overall about, you know, what is going to happen in regards to the debt than blaming it on who created the debt, which, again, of course, a media company that's controlled by, quite honestly, a political party is going to blame it on the other side. In reality, both sides, two of them, both of them are responsible for this mess that we're in.
Absolutely. I'm with you there. And in a way, the taxpayers and consumers are also responsible for this because in the end, we put the people in power that have been able to do this on both sides, as
Very
unfortunate
true.
as it is. Speaking of the
Yep.
consumer, I know that this segment's running a little bit long, but did you know that American credit card balances have passed over $1 trillion?
Yeah.
$1 trillion. I'm going to read you this stat. It says that a typical American household now carries $10,000 in credit card debt. All right. And to go even further, of that average American household, 22% of them hold at least $10,000, meaning that most people who do have credit card debt are above that $10,000
Yeah.
threshold, right?
And here's why it's a problem, John. That's because when you're looking at different types of loans, a traditional mortgage might be right now for, 5 or 6%. Historically, it was at 2 or 3 for about a decade, right? Um, if you look at a car loan, right, you purchased a new car recently,
Mm-hmm.
6, 7, 8%, depending on what time you got into the market and what type of credit you have. Maybe it could be a little bit higher, 9 or 10% APR. But credit cards are unique because their APR is usually anywhere from 22 to 27%. Um, and that is based off the total debt that you have. So after a year of not paying, let's say you have a 27% APR card, which is unfortunately relatively typical on these
Mm-hmm.
consumer credit cards.
Just to add a fact, the
Mm-hmm.
average rate is 24%, which is
Twenty-four percent.
the highest since President Ronald Reagan when he was dealing with
There
inflation
it
in the
is.
80s.
So 24%. So let's say you have that $10,000 mark on on your credit card. That means that if you're going to continue interest payments to not default on your debt, you're going to be paying $2,400 in interest alone, plus any principal that you're trying to pay down. So, for anybody that's watching this that struggles with credit card debt, my first thing that I would do is pay down as much of it as you can because that's going to be your highest percentage of APR that you're paying basically to the bank for no reason, just so that way you don't default. And then my second piece of advice is cut up your credit card, cancel your Amazon, cancel everything. As Dave Ramsey might say, you might be eating beans. What is it? Butter beans and
Yeah,
sitting at home, right?
and
Beans and
and
rice.
having sell everything and make the kids get nervous that they're going to be
Yeah,
sold next,
sell
right?
everything. But
Yeah.
seriously, that is a huge ripoff. That's ripping off thousands of families from the American dream because these people literally cannot afford to pay back the amount on their card. And then if you don't, then your credit's worse. And if your credit's worse, you can't get a loan for a home. You can't get a loan for a car. So
Or your
if
interest rates
you,
are higher,
yeah,
even if you do.
avoid
So,
credit cards at all costs if you can't pay them. I honestly, it
mm,
might be cheaper to go get a payday advance from somebody than get a credit card. So,
which is that's saying something. I definitely agree with you. Not to get too biblical, but if you do believe in the Bible, it says, and I think it's a great example for everyone, even if you don't, right? that the borrower is slave to the lender. And that unfortunately is so true in this economy, in this type of society that we live in, right? The lender's not looking out for you, right? They're not
No,
looking out and saying,
no.
hey, we love the fact that you use our credit card. Here's your 1% cash back because we're looking out for you. No, on the back end of that, you have people who are getting screwed literally 24, 25, 27% APR, where just like you said, if you're, $10,000 in debt, you just racked up basically another $3,000 in debt, and it continues and continues, and it doesn't stop. It's a snowball that
Real
rolls the
quick
wrong way.
story, John. Real quick story, okay?
Mm-hmm.
So I have a friend that really likes to travel, and about a year ago, he was trying to talk me into getting a travel card because you get all of these miles, man. You get the miles, they add up, you get free flights,
Yep.
right? Meanwhile, there's an annual fee of $299 on the card. I don't know, that could buy you a flight or two, depending on where you're going, right?
Yeah.
And then
Cheap
in
Southwest
addition,
flight.
yeah, Southwest. And in addition to that, if you ended up using that card and didn't have the funds to pay it off, well, 24% on average, right? Some are more, some are less. Well, I think that 24% of $10,000 that we talked of earlier, which is probably the moderate amount, that's
The average amount.
$2,400, right? Which could buy, I don't know, many flights to different places. So
Yes.
again, they get these people on the idea of consumerism of you're getting all this back and you don't have to do anything for it.
Mm-hmm.
Meanwhile, you're paying an annual fee and you're paying 24%
Mm-hmm.
interest. It's ridiculous. So
I mean,
yeah, once again, stay away from the credit card scam that it really is.
the biggest scam of all time is the minimum payments, right? Because that's
Yeah,
what every type of bill in the credit card industry will show is how much you
yeah.
owe,
And
minimum
it's always
payments,
on
how
that
much can
first
you do?
line. Minimum payment, $35.
Yep,
People make the
yep.
minimum payment of $35 for so long.
But
Well, you didn't realize
it,
there was 600 that you added on the month before, and 600
yeah,
the month before.
it
So now
and
you got a
and
snowball of debt.
and what it does is it just like you said, it teaches consumerism almost as a religion. Like you can just keep buying things and you can always pay the minimum payment until you die, right?
Yeah.
And that's what happens is a lot of people get sucked into this consumerism. It's really like a religion, honestly. They go
It
in and
is.
they have to continually buy something to be happy. One thing to keep in mind, and a lot of people will say, like, hey, listen, I'm going to use credit cards. I'm going to pay off the balance every month completely. What's wrong with that? And there's people like Dave Ramsey who are like, oh, it doesn't matter. Don't use them ever. Now there's some benefits to them, right? That they have like the security guarantee. Some of them do, right? Of, well,
Mm-hmm.
if you make an unauthorized
Sure.
purchase, we got you covered. So there
Yep.
is some benefit to that. But I would even caution people who think that they're just going to go on a, unsustained, untracked, you know, spinning spree where it's under control. Like that's fine until the first emergency comes. Oh, I can just put the tire on my credit card. I can just put this month's gas on my credit card. And before you know it, again, you start doing that again and again, and you fall in the cycle
Mm-hmm.
the same way. It's really
Yeah.
crazy.
It just becomes easier. They actually did a study. I forget who it was from, but they compared purchasing something with your credit card compared to purchasing it with cash, right?
Yeah,
And they found that the credit card actually makes you feel more powerful when you're purchasing something.
yeah,
So it rewards the feelings, the dopamine level of, wow, I just bought something, and I hand them a card, and it makes you feel powerful subconsciously. And then
yeah.
they compared the people that paid cash. And those people that paid cash, they actually looked at, again, the things that happen in the brain and found that the people that paid cash for an item actually felt
Worse,
subconscious
probably.
pain. They actually
Yeah.
felt subconscious pain. So one makes you feel powerful, the other one makes you feel painful. But which one is more dangerous? Well, the one that makes you feel powerful, because then you
Hmm.
can order on demand, you deserve it on demand. But guess what? They deserve your payments back, and they deserve your 24% APR at the end of the year, right? Don't
Yep.
do it. If you are going to have a credit card, be very conservative with it.
Absolutely. No, I'm with you there. This is a huge trend that we see happening. Again, I think we talked about this a couple of months ago. It's like at 934 billion, which is just a massive number. And then you hear 1 trillion. That's more debt on American credit cards than most countries carry.
Yep.
Absolutely unbelievable. And also, just like we said, balances of at least 10,000, that's an increase of 45%. That's remarkable. And it goes to show that I do believe that people are actually living paycheck to paycheck, but the credit card boom that's happening right now, it's going to catch up on the back end of this
It's going to
year. I
catch up
guarantee it.
eventually. It
I
has to.
guarantee it. The last
Yep.
year and a half, 2 years, oh, it's fine. I'll put it on my credit card. Well, when the creditors, when they slow down, that's when things will get ugly. It's going to
What
be
goes
crazy
up
to
must
see.
come down. Yep.
That's absolutely right. Blake, thank you so much for being on Thinking Property with me. I love having you as a co host. You're the man.
Thank you.
Thanks for your breakdown. Appreciate
Yep.
it.
Appreciate it.